Have you ever wondered why some people seem to just attract wealth and opportunities and even favor into their lives? But then you see others that they seem to just struggle and even just want to just settle in their discomfort. Well, today I'm going to actually show you how to unlock the abundance that is received from wisdom that can then give you access to the garden of wealth. Now, the first things that I want to address is this. What is wisdom and why is it so important? Well, you see, wisdom is the ability to judge correctly and act wisely. Based on the knowledge and the understanding, all of these things are being received from God. So you can only get this wisdom after seeking for it from God. This is key because this is going to tie into everything that we're going to share. So the first scripture that I want to go over is going to be in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 13. And it says, "Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things that canneth desire are not to be compared unto her. Length of days is in the right hand, and the left hand is riches and honor." Now, what does that say? If we break this down line by line, it says, happy is the man that findeth wisdom. You're seeking out for it. When you're seeking out for it, what is it telling us? It's telling us how precious it is. It has more value than silver and in gold and even in rubies themselves. And it says anything that a man can desire shall not compare it to her. Because, and this is the promise that is been given when we receive wisdom. Because remember, wisdom itself is the actual application of your understanding and the knowledge that you have received. So there has to be some force of action that you have to be willing to take. And the promise is this: the length of days is in the right hand, a longevity of a life. You have an extended lifetime now. And then on the left hand side is what it comes with is riches and honor. So not only are you going to have a long and fulfilled life, but you're also going to receive an abundance of riches, but also honor. Your name is going to have some value because you were seeking out for wisdom, and the very wisdom of what you're applying is going to transpire into all of the different relationships that now you have. So you become more valuable based off of understanding that wisdom is more important than all of the things that a man can desire. And so this is why it's so important that when we have our priorities straight, this allows us to understand that if we have wealth, we can just as easily lose it because we didn't have our priorities straight. You see, it's nothing different than having a lottery ticket. Imagine you winning a lottery ticket and it was for $1 million. Now understand, because you did not receive it based off of your level of understanding of applying the wisdom in order to get it, to you, it feels like, well, this just came out of nowhere, so now I can just do whatever. All these different things of what it was saying, don't put any of these things above wisdom. Now you're not going to cherish it as the very blessing of what it is, and now you're going to mishandle it. And it'll go out just as fast as it came in. So the wisdom itself, which again, it is the ability to judge correctly and act wisely with the things that you have. So imagine if you don't now have wisdom, it's very easy for you to misuse the very blessings of what God was given to you. And then now you're just backtracking. So again, it's just stacking on to everything of what we're sharing so far. So now I want to move to how Solomon lived and why it was so important of what he actually asked for when God came to him in a dream. So here it is. It says in 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 9, and it says, give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this thou so great people? And then God said unto him, because thou hast asked this thing, and asked not for thy long life, nor has asked riches for thyself, no hast asked the life of thy hand, meaning he wanted to kill off all of his enemies as well. He didn't ask for that, but has asked for thou understanding to discern judgment. Behold, I have done according to thy words. I have given thee a wise and understanding heart, so that there was none like thee before, neither after thee shall any arise like unto thee. And I have also given thee that which thou hast not asked, which both riches and honor, so that there shall not be any amongst the kings like unto thee all thy days. This is key, because it's going back. Like I said, scripture is always going to support one another. It's not going to contradict. So here it is, when we're talking about back in Proverbs, what did it say was more precious than anything? Don't put any of the substances above wisdom. And what did Solomon ask for? He asked for wisdom. And it was because, notice God's response. He said, because you didn't ask for these things, and you were not thinking about yourself, you were thinking about, again, because he has now been blessed to now be king over Israel. And so Solomon is now saying, I don't have any of this understanding of how to lead your people. So he's asking for this wisdom so that he can have the discernment to judge right from wrong and being able to lead his people correctly. That's what he asked for, right? He asked for an understanding heart. And it was because of what he specifically asked for, and he wasn't thinking about just himself. God gave him what he asked for, but he also was blessed the riches, so that there would be none before him and none like him in all the days of his days. It's fantastic, and it's just absolutely mind-blowing. But this is why when we seek those things first, we now have, again, the right judgment to being able to use not only the very gifts that God has given us, but the very blessings that he's given us as well. So this right here is key. The law of daily compounding. The reason why this is so important is because, you see, every single day we have a mission on this earth. And the sooner that we start to request for this wisdom on a day-to-day basis, this is going to allow us to start having a compound effect on the results of what we have already been given, but it's going to start compounding. It's called the law of the farm. I want you to think for a second. If you was a farmer and you decided today to plant that seed, tomorrow do not expect for a harvest to grow based off of the decision making that you did just today. You started the process to being able to receive for tomorrow, but it's not going to come to you exactly tomorrow. But over time, when you're putting the necessary effort and the understanding, the wisdom, the proper application to being able to eventually receive a harvest, it's going to be tenfold the amount of what you actually were putting in. So notice how an apple itself, when you consume it, not only is it nutrition your body, but what it's also doing is this: it's exposing the very seed of where, because see, the definition of a fruit is in itself is what it is. So the seed itself is what created the apple, but understand that it doesn't just turn into another apple once it reaps a harvest. It turns it into an entire tree that can produce hundreds more of apples. So we got to understand something. It's the compound effect. You are releasing that seed from your hands. You're giving up the control, and you're putting your investment of what God was willing to give you into an area that can only be multiplied through this wisdom of understanding the proper application of what you're doing. You see, you're putting it into an environment that's allowing God to work on it as you're working on it. And in due season, you'll reap a harvest of so much more that not only can just provide for you and your family, but remember, one seed to turn into an entire tree that can produce 100 different apples. How many other people can now you bless based off of the wisdom that you have been constantly seeking on a day-to-day basis that now can impact other people with not only the wisdom that you have with using your words to being able to communicate that wisdom to them, but also being able to share with them the riches that comes from it too as well. So this is key because these are biblical principles that allows us to being able to understand that we don't have a choice in the matter to just think that our lives do not matter. Every single day we're either progressing or we're digressing. So we have to understand that every single day is very significant. Even if you think back to Genesis, in Genesis chapter 1, notice how God was being very descriptive in every chapter after that in terms of what he was specifically doing on a day-to-day basis. He could have just as easily said, well, everything got established and it could have been just like, God created the heavens and the earth, and that could have been just the end of the chapter, but he didn't do that. He continued to just, give us this beautiful drawing visually in our minds of like, wow, like he's getting so descriptive of what he was specifically doing. Why? Because by the time that he created us, he wanted us to understand something. He said, let us make man in our image. So he was telling us since the time that we got here, it's in God's nature for him to be creative. But if he made us in his image, then he also gave us the same identity as well for us to be willing to create. So this is why if you create something, I don't know if you're in construction or, if you're making content, all these different things, when you're creating something, you get a sense of fulfillment. Even when you're having a kid, you get a sense of fulfillment to know that, wow, you're working in your God likeness. It's absolutely incredible. So the more we exercise that and we're asking for the wisdom of how we can use it correctly so that we're being wise with the very gifts of what's been already given, we can continue to keep producing the harvest that is going to later show up in our lives. And so again, it's the law of the farm. We cannot rush the results. We can only just do our part and understand that we receive the rewards later. Now in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6, it says, go to the ant, thy sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, oversee, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. Now, what this scripture is saying is this. They are preparing today so they can later have an abundance for tomorrow. You see, during the summer, everybody wants to be able to celebrate and to just have a good time. But see, he's telling us that we have to start adopting certain mindsets. See, the ants, they understand that right after summer, it's going to approach into a time where we cannot get these different opportunities for us to prepare. And so all they do is during the summertime, they do a bunch of storing and bringing it back to the colony, which now allows them to have a surplus and an abundance for now when it's time of the winter, when they don't go out, they have all of the resources that is needed. So they're preparing for a time when there is going to be trial and there's going to be difficulty. And it's saying when we have now understood that there's going to be different times and seasons in our lives like this, we should be preparing today so that we are now prepared for tomorrow. Now, here's the thing that's really interesting. The dangers of neglecting wisdom. So in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 24, and it says, because I have called and ye rejected, I have stretched out my hand and no man regarded. But ye have set out not if all my counsel, and would none of the preferred. I also will laugh at the calamity. I will mock when they fear cometh. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. For that they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. This is why this is so important, because it says simply, when you reject wisdom today, wisdom is going to reject you also. So notice something that's very key. When we're stacking all these different things, God is telling us that it is important for us to not put any substance above wisdom, because it is precious than even silver, gold, and even rubies. And when we reject wisdom, simply, we don't have enough fear of the Lord. So when all these calamities, meaning trials and things going on into our lives, when all of these things is going on, it's saying that at this point, because you have rejected me, I'm going to reject you. So we have to be very careful and understand that wisdom is always seeking out for you. But when you're rejecting the very knowledge that can be given, then there's going to be certain things that's going to happen to your life, and you're going to be expecting to now receive it when the trial and error is now happening. But again, it's the law of the farm. So you reap what you sow. And so if you're sowing bad seeds, you are going to reap up a harvest of thistles and thorns, which again is something that you cannot use. And so this is just a prime example of everything that we're sharing right now. So in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 3, it says, commit your hand to the Lord and your plans will be established. It's just mind blowing. This is saying, simply put, that every successful entrepreneur, leader, innovator, we're getting all these creative ideas from God specifically. And when you're yielding to the very ideas of what has been given, what does it say? And your plans will be established. So it's not saying that we create our own ideas. No, we understand where the ideas come from, and we're yielding ourselves to what our calling is. And when we have now submitted our way of thinking to that, then our plans can then be established. Why? Because it is now God's plans that we're now operating off of. So I know you may be asking yourself at this point, how to actually unlock creative thinking that can now start to produce the results, because the wisdom itself, again, is the application. So there's something that you have to now be using this knowledge and to actually further in your life later on. Now, some of the things that has been really specifically helping me is you have to be willing to spend at least 10 minutes, at least, of prayer. And now prayer does not mean that I'm just asking for all these different things. It's more of you submitting yourself and understanding that God is above you, and that you're trying to now again receive the wisdom for today of what is specifically needed to get done today. So you're asking for the best ideas that are specifically coming directly from God, which is now giving you the task list that you need. Remind you, back in Genesis, God had an agenda. He had every single day planned out of what he was specifically going to do day after day after day after day, which then furthermore became a system that now it's all operating efficiently on its own. So having that system of being able to ask and receive wisdom for today, and being able to really align yourself with what it is that God is calling you to today, that is going to transpire into so many different ideas that now you have to be willing to act accordingly, so that now you can start journaling the process and being able to learn as you're going. So in Proverbs chapter 15, verse 22, it says, without counsel, purpose are disappointed, but in the multitude of counsels, they are established. This is meaning this: without counsel, your plans will fail, but with many advisors, they will succeed. So we have to understand that the circle that we do have does have a huge role to play, because even back in Genesis, God said it's not good for man to be alone. He wasn't just only, he was focused mainly on, marriage, right? But that wasn't only just talking about marriage. It was also talking about, in general, it is not good for man to be alone. So understanding that if we don't have counsel in our lives, our plans will fail. But if we have many, then now we will succeed. So we have to be willing to understand that all of this stuff we don't have to do on our own. We can seek from counsel and wisdom from other individuals that have already been through what we've been through, and being able to learn from their mistakes, so that now we don't have to repeat the same process of not being able to, like, again, use every single day with wisdom, right? So we have to be willing to cut off distractions that is now blocking you from wisdom. Now, this can come in various forms. Oftentimes, other people may try to use their distractions and just watching movies and all these different things, eating perhaps. So we have to be very intentional about where we're sending our time and our focus, because what you choose to focus on is exactly what you get. Remember, abundance and lack can exist at the same time. But the reality is this: you can't go left and go right at the same time. So your focus is directly connected to the results that you get. So if you're focused on lack, you're going to be experiencing in your life the essence of you personally watching and looking for opportunities where you can see lack. But if you're choosing to now focus on the abundance of life, and you're noticing now that it's the wisdom that actually is more precious than anything else, you are now starting to being able to spot out all the different opportunities that God has given you. And now you're able to, again, use the proper judgment to being able to now make the wise decisions of how to act accordingly. So in the investing space, I love this Proverbs, and it says, Proverbs chapter 23, verse 23, and it says, buy the truth and sell it not, and also wisdom and the instructions and understanding. Now, and in investing, there's something that's called, buy low and sell high, right? But this is saying you are buying the truth and then you selling it never. Why is it saying that? We can also take the same principle and apply it into the stock market as well. When you buy low, or when you just buy in general, and then you sell never, what are you doing? Now you have an asset. You don't get rid of an asset when it's providing so much more for you. So remember the law of the farm. The very tree that we're now planting based off of a single seed, once when that tree is now established, we can now continue to keep being fed by this tree. But now imagine if you decided to now cut this tree and then you sell it off. Well, now what you have immediately done is you have now sold off something that was also providing for you at the same time. It doesn't make sense. Again, this is why it's important for us to receive the wisdom first, because now this is going to allow us to be a lot more careful with our decision making. So it's absolutely incredible. So again, what we are wanting to do, we understand that wisdom is an asset into our lives. So you're not going to receive the wisdom and the understanding, right? It's the ability to act on the very knowledge of what has been given. So you're not going to now all of a sudden be acting in this knowledge, what you have received, and then all of a sudden get rid of it, and now you're not operating in it no longer. Doesn't make sense. So that's why it's important for us to invest and use our money, because it's saying buy the truth. We have to be willing to put ourselves in certain environments that allows us to be able to receive the truth, that allows us to being able to now have the abundance and use it correctly and not sell it off. Understand that this is going to be something that is going to constantly be able to work for us. So wisdom itself equals transformation. Because you see, it is not this thing of where people used to always say that knowledge is power. That's only half of the truth. The applied knowledge is power, which is what wisdom is. So when you are just only seeking out for the knowledge, it's absolutely useless. Why? Because you're not using it. So what wisdom says is once when you actually start to apply these different principles into your life, it actually transforms you not only from the outside, but from the inside first. So we have to understand some things. That wisdom is the key to long life, riches, and honor. But also, we have to be very crucial and critical about where we're spending our time because, again, we're either compounding interest and accumulating, or we're going to find ourselves being in a struggle for the rest of our lives. You know, it's funny. You know, I got a mentor. His name is, Holton Buggs. And I love what he shared. And he says, if you treat life casually, you will become a casualty. So when you're not investing into yourself, and again, going back on what we were saying before, if you're not seeking out for the wisdom of life, the very thing of what you're not seeking out for, you will become a casualty, not only to yourself, but for your family too as well. So if this video blessed you in any kind of way, be sure to like, be able to subscribe, comment, and be able to share this with, your loved ones if you believe that this is something that you believe that it can help them, and so God bless.